The James Harden drama seems to be getting crazier by the minute. You see, after the James Harden trade talks between the Philadelphia 76ers and the Los Angeles Clippers fell apart about a week ago, the relationship between the Philly organization and James Harden have gotten worse and worse, and that's to put it lightly. You see, James Harden was doing a media event for Adidas in China where he would go on to say word for word, Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will never be a part of an organization that he's a part of. And then he would go on to repeat that exact same quote, for emphasis. And oh my god, it blew up social media. Twitter went crazy, Instagram went crazy. It's all ESPN could talk about. And, understandably so. I mean, Harden had just opted into his $35.6 million contract for the 2023-24 season and had demanded a trade in June. And in July, the Sixers said that they'd do their best to, make a deal happen. The reason he opted in was for a sign-in trade. He was hoping to get signed by another team, and the 76ers were hoping to get something in return instead of letting him walk in free agency. The problem is that the Philadelphia 76ers seem to have gone back on their word here and are deciding to keep James Harden instead of trading him. And the whole point of signing with the Sixers was to be traded. So obviously James Harden feels betrayed here, but we also have to keep in mind that it's pretty obvious at this point James Harden highly overestimated his value in free agency. I mean, he spent like a week or two in the free agent market. Things weren't looking so good. He wasn't getting the value he felt he deserved, which is why he even decided to again negotiate with the 76ers. So he is overestimating his value at this point. And then the 76ers go back on their whole deal. It was more like a handshake agreement that he made with Daryl Morey, where he said, I'll, opt into my contract, and then you guys will trade me right now so you can get something in return. And, Daryl Morey seemed to have gone back on that. In fact, the drama seems to stem from a place even further in the past, where last offseason, Morey and Harden had seemed to have another handshake agreement on a new contract extension last offseason. That's when Harden opted out of a $47 million player option and took a $14 million discount to re-sign. The reason he took that discount was because he was told he was going to be getting a huge contract by the end of that year. And, it also enabled the Sixers to sign a guy like PJ Tucker and Daniel House Jr. How much did that really help? I wouldn't say too much, because obviously, as we now know, the 76ers ended up losing to the Boston Celtics in 7 games, didn't even make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, let alone the actual NBA Finals. It seems like no matter what Philly tries, that it can never seem to get that second star right alongside Joel Embiid. I mean, they tried Markelle Fultz, got decimated by injuries. Then, they had Ben Simmons for a little bit. What happened to Ben Simmons? He loses his confidence after a couple seasons. Yeah, that gets shut down. So then they bring in, James Harden. Now they have James Harden, and James Harden doesn't want to be there. Hell, there was even a little Jimmy Butler era. Let's not forget what Jimmy Butler was able to do. And Jimmy Butler was nice, but they decided to re-sign Tobias Harris over Jimmy Butler. That's a story for whatever. We've talked about that before in other videos. That's not what we're here to focus on. We're here to focus on James Harden's drama between Daryl Morey. Now, their relationship goes even further back than their time in Philadelphia, because Morey was with the Houston Rockets organization when James Harden was having some of the best seasons of his career. In fact, when James Harden had his MVP season with the Houston Rockets, Daryl Morey was a big reason for that, because he constructed a roster around Harden which allowed him to play the kind of ball that won him the MVP. Now, did it lead to any playoff success? No, but it led to some pretty good individual success for James Harden. I mean, let's be real here for a second. The duo of Daryl Morey and James Harden had a lot of success, at least a lot of regular season success in Houston. You see, during Murray's tenure with the Rockets, he didn't have a single losing record and advanced to the playoffs 9 times, including the Western Conference Finals in 2015 and 2018. And in 2018, he also won NBA Executive of the Year. So Daryl Morey and James Harden were a match made in heaven in Houston. In fact, James Harden had accolades of his own. Of course, like I said, he won his MVP. He averaged 30-plus points for 3 years in a row. And he was a 9-time All-Star in Houston. He he became a star, one of the faces of the NBA when he played for the Rockets. So, in the past, they've had a good relationship. In fact, Daryl Morey is the only reason that James Harden went to the 76ers, used them as a getaway from the Brooklyn Nets. Daryl Morey was a big contributing factor to getting James Harden into Philly, and it seems like a year and a half later, and they hate each other. I don't know if Daryl Morey feels the same way about James Harden, but James Harden absolutely despises the dude. I mean, you don't go around into it was an Adidas little event, and he's talking about Daryl Morey to a bunch of little kids in China. I mean, that's not really where you want to make the move, but I guess James Harden was just trying to make a statement at that point, right? That's all that was. Now, if James Harden is truly gone, where does this leave the Philadelphia 76ers heading into this season? Say he does get moved or is moved by the deadline, you're currently looking at a Sixers roster that consists of Joel Embiid, Tobias Harris, and PJ Tucker as the 3 highest paid players. I mean, PJ Tucker is old as dirt at this point. Tobias Harris is a solid dude. I mean, he'll go out, average you 14, 15 points with about 5 rebounds and 5 assists. So, he's like a solid number 4, number 3 option, but he's getting paid, $30 million. So that kind of holds back the 76ers from making a move, at least until James Harden is off the books. And, of course, they got that young and up-and-coming guard in Tyrese Maxey, who seems to be getting better every single season. I mean, he went from averaging 8 to 20 points in, 2 years? So Maxey is maybe one of the few bright spots on this team. But like I said, without Harden getting moved for anything, this team is not going to be competing for an NBA Finals. Maybe their new head coach, Nick Nurse, changes things, changes up the culture a little bit, because Doc Rivers is gone. And Nick Nurse, you've seen what he's been able to do. He had some success with Toronto when they had acquired Kawhi Leonard, so maybe he's able to duplicate that success again, this time in Philadelphia. Now, all the way throughout the playoffs and in the lead up to free agency, Harden's camp was trying to get a new deal done with the Philadelphia 76ers. He wanted to be in Philly, but Philly told him, we're not even going to discuss contracts or anything until free agency actually began. And even when it did begin, it's looking like they didn't even offer the dude a long-term contract. It wasn't even on the table. There was no long-term contract even offered to the guy. So of course James Harden is going to be upset. Now, in this specific circumstance, I do think I want to take James Harden's side on this. It does look like, from the outside looking in, that, Daryl Morey did him a little bit dirty, and I understand that. But this is James Harden's 3rd time asking out from a team. I mean, he did the same thing in Houston, he did it in Brooklyn, and now he's doing it again in Philadelphia. There seems to be one common denominator in this whole thing, and it's James Harden. Now, again, in this situation, I do think he might be in the right, because Daryl Morey kind of seems to have done him dirty, but we'll never really know. Anyway, that's just me. I'll catch y'all later. Much love. Deuces.